it's not my main motive, money, or especially not fame or clout at all. But I did early on know that I wanted to make a living off of this. The only reason I could say I like money is that it allows me to spend all my time on music, because it allows me to be free creatively, and that I can just focus all my time on making music, and that's the only thing I care about.
Episode 27 of Invest in Music with San Holo. Today we're here to talk about Existential Dance Music, his new album that's coming out as of the time of this release. We talk about his background as an artist, the meaning behind the album, and what it means to grow your career as an artist in the world today. As a reminder, you can collect this episode on investinmusic.xyz. It's the best way to support our guests, so without further ado, let's get into one of our most epic episodes to date with San Holo. We are back. Invest in Music. We got San Holo on the podcast today.
Are we starting right now?
We're live, baby.
Okay.
What's going on, man?
Hold up. I'm ready.
How are you?
I'm feeling solid today. 78%. 78%.
Talk me through that. What is this percentage feeling thing we got going on for the people, the listeners out there that might not know?
I'm just feeling 78% right now. I think tonight's going to go up to like 85%. If everything works out. The percentage thing is like something that happened, man, with me and my followers. I started putting it in my Twitter handle. It's kind of my daily mood meter. Mm-hmm. It's a way of expressing how you're feeling without having to put it into many words. And people just started doing it.
Yeah.
Like I would just see people like John, 30%, Stacy, 55%. And it kind of became part of the Stay Vibrant movement, you know. And if you see someone with a low percentage, you know, reach out to them and try to boost their percentage, you know. It's a fun and quirky tool to kind of track your current mood, but you got to realize that deep within you're like endlessly vibrant. And you know, there's what's that endless symbol? Yeah, the endless.
Yeah, infinite. Yeah,
infinite symbol. Deep down you're infinite percentage.
What are some of the habits that you practice to boost your percentage?
I think the main thing for me is trying to stay present, which is very difficult for me. Growing up, I've always, I don't know, it was probably my culture, my parents, my school, always future oriented, always goal achievement oriented. So that was the only way I knew how to deal with situations. Almost like anxiety became like a habit. Like dealing with things was always like, oh, fear, anxiety. Instead of excitement and fun and joy, it was always like, oh, I hope nothing goes wrong. And I started to realize, whoa, you don't have to live life. You don't have to live life like that. It's a matter of shifting your perspective and your mind. But if that's all you've been taught from a young age, it takes time, and I'm still in that process right now.
Yeah.
That's what the album is also about, you know, shifting that mindset slowly to getting more in touch with your true self. Because your true self is not an anxious being, you know. You're not born anxious or fearful, or you just kind of lose that when once you get into the real world and like school and society and friends and all of that stuff shapes you into who you are later in life. And sometimes it's important to get back to the core. Damn, it's 5 minutes in and we're like already talking about...
We ran right into it. I want to spend a lot of time unpacking your album, Existential Dance Music. It's the reason why we're having this conversation today. But before we do, for people who don't know, who is San Holo?
Oh, that's the question of the album. The album starts with the phrase, I don't know who I am. And I thought I and then there's the first line is like, I'm scared I'm not who I thought I was. That's how the album starts. Who is San Holo? San Holo is my artist project. It is a project I started 10 years ago. And this is actually in my 10th year doing San Holo.
Wow.
Very grateful to still be doing this and still be touring the world and releasing music and having people listen to my music. It's really like that. Not a day goes by without me being grateful for that. Music. I used to be a guitar player. At some point I got bored of that and started making beats, and that's when the San Holo project kind of started blowing up here in the US, and I started touring here and changed my whole life. Music literally shaped my entire life, like from being a guitar teacher to touring, America, to touring the world. The people I've seen, the cultures I've been introduced to, the different cities I've been able to walk through. It's like, I feel like music has always been this entity in my life that if I follow that, it brings me to wherever I need to be.
When did you first start feeling that energy? Now, for context, growing up, you lived in the Netherlands.
Super small town in Holland.
And did you feel that calling to be an artist or a musician very early on in your life?
It started when I first picked up a guitar when I was like 12 or 13 years old. I started playing some things, and I had my first guitar lesson. And then when I learned how to play a chord and I struck a chord, like, I just remember that feeling of like, whoa, I'm making sounds. I'm putting sounds into the air, and they're harmonious, and it does something. It evokes an emotion. And from that moment, I just knew, okay, this is something that's going to be such a big thing in my life. And I studied it as well. I studied at the Rotterdam Conservatory as a guitarist. And I never had a backup plan either. It was just, Mom, I'm going to do this. And I know my teachers were like, oh, you got to have a backup plan. I think that's in high school. It's hard for me to translate because it works a little bit different in Holland.
Yeah.
But my high school teachers were like, oh, it's pretty hard to, being a musician is they basically said, you need to be willing to not make any money. I didn't care about that. It was just, this is what I have to do. This is, it wasn't even a matter of being happy or that makes me happy, but it did, but it just felt like I had to do it.
Yeah.
I often say, like, even if no one would be listening right now, or like 5 people would be listening, I would still be making music. It's just something that it's easier than talking, even though it might not sound like it, but making music is, if I could just play some chords for you instead of having to tell you all this, that'd be so much more convenient.
And so what did that progression look like for you, for going from, picking up a guitar at age 12? You mentioned that you were in a band. Like, talk to me about your progression as an artist and as a musician in your life.
I feel like back then I was a guitar player, and I still am, of course. And what made sense was to be in bands. But I realized later, like, whether it's me DJing or producing or making a beat or playing guitar or playing piano, it doesn't really matter as long as I'm making music. And I think, of course, throughout the years I went through, different phases. I used to love like rock music. I was in rock bands. Then I started making hip hop music. That progressed into electronic music. But it's never like I never decided that I wanted to be a DJ. It's really funny because I started playing guitar and I didn't have any affiliation or love for electronic music. It's just where music brought me at some point. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't. Still, if people say, "Oh yeah, you're that DJ," it doesn't sound like a
Right.
right to me. I feel like music is just I just want music to flow out of me, whether you call it a guitarist or a DJ or like a, I don't care. But I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
It does, because I find it very interesting that when I first discovered your music, this was very early on in SoundCloud. It was kind of right around when electronic music was having a major moment. I'm curious to hear, before you actually put out the first song under San Holo on SoundCloud, what went into that decision and that process?
you mean why I decided to start putting out music as San Holo?
Yeah.
I before I started putting out music as San Holo, I was ghost producing some stuff for DJs that were hitting me up, and they were like, "Hey, could you make this song for me?" And for me, it was easy because, back then I don't know, like most DJs didn't really know how to produce, so I was just putting chords on there and like melodies, and they're like, "Yo, that's dope. Yeah, can you make the build up longer?" And I was like, "Build up? Like, is that important? Like, can we just, no, yeah, you have to go like, I'm like, okay, cool. Easy. I just put it in there. And then I realized, whoa, these tracks are doing pretty well. Like, back then it was still like SoundCloud and YouTube, and they were getting a lot of plays. And I was like, why don't I just like do my own thing? And start doing the remixes to Miss Jackson, Dr. Dre, Next Episode remix, alongside doing some originals like We Rise. And it really worked out. It really worked out. But I wasn't, when I made those tracks, I wasn't aware of DJ culture or club culture or, I didn't even know you needed to leave some room so that you can mix in the other track. I didn't think about that stuff. And I think because I didn't know, it was different for people here, and they were like, oh, this is interesting.
Right.
It always came from like a place of musicality and just exploring music, and then it turned into a career. So then, of course, I kind of leaned into that, and I guess now I am an EDM DJ.
I would say you're much more than an EDM DJ, but for all intents and purposes, I guess we can boil it down to that.
Yeah, that's what I say now when I enter America, and the TSA is like, what do you do? What do you hear? And I used to say like, oh, well, actually I'm a producer, and I used to, now I just say I'm a DJ. I'm like, oh, you're a DJ? Okay.
Yeah.
Come in.
Easy path of entry.
Yeah.
And so what did it look like to start building a team around you? Because I'm sure at this time, this is when close friend of ours, Thor, probably came into the picture, I'm assuming. Did you start building like a team around the San Holo project?
Yeah, Thor is my creative director, and I went to high school with him. I was actually in a band with him. He used to be a singer. We've known each other for over 15 years. And at some point, we kind of did our own thing. He went more into graphic design. I went into music. And then later in life, we started a record label called Bitbird together. He did the logo, and I like kind of created the music at first. And then we really started this company together and started supporting upcoming artists on SoundCloud, just because we wanted to support this cool new music that was starting to come up from the underground. And we didn't even sign stuff at the beginning. We just wanted to upload it on SoundCloud because we wanted people to hear it.
Right.
And then it kind of turned into an official label. But if anything, it's always been, I just met artists in my life and heard their tracks, and I was like, man, you should be on the main stage. Yeah. And in hindsight, that's not as easy as I thought it was, because some of my friends that are producers are extremely talented, and talent is just one thing. A lot of things need to happen at the same time but I feel this pain inside of me sometimes when I meet people that are so talented, their music is so incredibly good, and they're not getting any shows because I don't know why. I still can't figure it out, but like music is just one thing. and that saddens me because for me it's always been just music.
Right.
I've learned to, I guess, tap the other boxes too, like social media, presenting yourself, building a brand. But that always, music is the purest form, and I think that's getting harder and harder these days to be about the music.
Right.
I feel like in the past it was more just about the music, but I'm not sure. I don't want to make any bold statements, but you know.
I mean, I would definitely acknowledge that the brand building part of an artist project is extremely important these days. You know, even at the top of this podcast, you mentioned how you have the percentage boost, you have stay vibrant, you have all of these different memes that you're kind of creating, but they all kind of build back into your brand and your essence. And I think the one thing I've always been impressed about by you is that your brand has always just been a very authentic representation of yourself. I've never felt like it was you trying to...
That's a really nice compliment. I appreciate that.
Of course. And I guess I'm curious to hear, did that ever feel like a conscious decision for you to be like, I'm going to create this image that is San Holo, or did it always just feel very natural to you?
I think, you know, certain things you amplify a little bit. The percentage thing was a thing that came really natural. I was on tour and my friend was like, "How are you feeling today, son?" And I was just like randomly, I'm like, I don't know, man, 50%. And then he was like, "Oh, what, 50? I feel like a solid 75%. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." So we started talking like that to each other. And then I put it in my Twitter handle, or X handles, it's called now, X. Yeah. And that kind of came from there. It really stemmed from caring about emotions and humans and being empathetic, which is, I think, you know, becomes very natural to me. So I think certain things like that, of course, you amplify them a little bit, and you just like when you're on stage, you know, in this room I can make a movement like this, but on stage you have to make a movement like this, you know, because you're like in front of thousands of people and otherwise no one sees it. So that's how I approach things. It's all, to me, it's all authentic, but sometimes you have to amplify things a little bit more. But it's all real to me, you know, nothing is a lie. Yeah.
I noticed that very early on. I would say even in your very earliest releases, you had this like swirl tag that you would put in the middle of your drops. It's something that I always gravitated towards, but I found it so impressive how in an age where there became a very templated sound that was future-based at the time, you were able to distinguish yourself and really break out of that mold, because I really feel like you found this voice and this sound that was authentically you. And I think one way to track that is just looking at all of these different ideas that you've sort of proliferated around your brand that kind of ended up becoming this thing that is now San Holo, you know?
Thanks. Yeah, I like it when I didn't sing on my tracks back then because I was a little bit shy. That's something I developed later on. But I love it when you can hear a producer's voice in the music. You know, their identity, their statements. And I think I get excited about that stuff when I hear, oh, that's such a like Skrillex thing, you know. Skrillex is a genius in that regard, you know, like he does it so well. And I'm inspired by that. Just like certain guitar players, when they do a guitar solo, oh, you know, it's like them. You're like, oh, that's Slash, or that's John Frusciante from the Chili Peppers. Like, you just know. And I wanted to get that in my production too. So I use a lot of the same sounds. Even still to this day, I use some of the same sounds and samples, but especially in an age where there's so many options, so many synthesizers, so many computer plugins, I like to kind of stick to a more minimal palette because it makes me more creative.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk quickly about the song Light that ended up becoming such a major moment for you, because I think it transcends really well into the inspiration behind the album that we're going to be talking about. You've said to me kind of behind the scenes that having a hit is something that is such a major thing in your career. Can you talk a little bit more about the song Light and what it's kind of did for you and your project? And then maybe just like, you know, everything that comes to mind when you think about this song in particular relative to your artist project as a whole.
Light. I wrote that song, the melody of it on a plane. And then I knew it was important. I knew it was something special. And immediately I had the phrase, I just want to see the light. I knew that was the phrase. I don't know why or where it came from. It just, I don't know. I thought about this many times. Like, how did it just came to me. And maybe that's also just fine that it's not explainable, or it just happened. And it's funny, 5 years later now, I understand why I wrote that line. Back then I didn't really understand it, especially when I had to like explain it to like the press and like, oh, what does the song mean? I always felt like I had to think of stories or like think of ways to explain it, but it didn't really feel authentic because I just didn't know it yet. But now, like 5 years later, I realized this song is about finding your own light. You know, it's about finding that light inside that everyone is carrying. Everyone has a light inside of them, and sometimes it gets dimmed by like all the stuff and the noise we carry and the baggage we carry throughout our lives. But light is about getting back in touch with that light inside, you know. And it was such a, you call it epiphany, when I realized this 5 years later. Like, whoa, subconsciously I was already writing about this stuff that I was gonna need now, because like to bridge it to the album is about like getting through anxiety and getting through a depression, kind of trying to see the light, you know. And I just thought it was so special that back then I was writing about something that was going to matter 5 years later.
Right.
But I knew it was special. I knew it was, I had to put it out back then. This didn't really fully answer your question about how, career-wise, what it does for me. But this is the emotional explanation.
Yeah. I think it's a very healthy way of reacting to it, because the one thing I sense from all your responses is that you're not driven by money, by status, or by like, you know, clout, for lack of a better term. It's always just like a feeling and an emotion, you know?
I mean, yeah. I care so much about clout, man. I'm here with Cooper, like, doing a podcast. Like,
oh, please.
No, it's, it's not my main motive. It's not my main motive, money, or especially not fame or clout at all. But I did early on know that I wanted to make a living off of this. I wanted this to be, you know, the only reason I could say I like money is that it allows me to spend all my time on music.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care about, like, I don't have a lot of expensive equipment or things. The only reason I like money is because it allows me to be free creatively, and that I can just focus all my time on making music, and that's the only thing I care about. But you know, of course, I wanted to make a career out of this. I was like, okay, this is working. I'm gonna put my all into this. I'm gonna go tour. I'm gonna make music consistently and take this very seriously. And to bridge it back to the early conversation we had, that came with a lot of anxiety for me, you know, because instead of being like excited, it was also like, oh wow, I gotta make this happen now. This is it. And out of a habit, I would just kind of go like, okay, what can go wrong? Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Instead of thinking, oh, what can happen, you know? And maybe that's why at some point I started losing that light, you know? And now I'm here 10 years later trying to get back in touch with that light.
Yeah. I love that you're highlighting the 10-year journey that was the San Holo project, because it's something I've been realizing a lot lately, is that I think people want success a lot quicker than it really takes. You know, I think if people don't see immediate results after a year, 2 years, like, this is over, this is never going to work.
Yeah.
You really do
tell
need
that to
think,
all the record labels right now. That's how all the record labels, they only care about like that one moment, and they don't care about they don't trust artists anymore in that way. You know, it's like, oh, like it took me a long time to get to this point. You know, this is 10 years. I had mini successes here and there. I'm gonna say I didn't even have. I mean, Light was a hit, but it wasn't like a billion streams hit. It was like, It's got a solid 200 million streams, which is insane to me. But I've seen, you know, tracks that are just major hits on radio. Light was an underground hit still, you know. It's not, it was played on the radio a little bit. It wasn't, you know, maybe I'm downgrading it a little bit, but I think touring and like being consistent with putting out music and communicating with your following has got me here, like bridged this 10-year lifespan of this project.
I think for Light, it was one of the first songs that really exemplified the culture of what melodic bass music meant. You know, like, it had this pocket in this window where, you know, just from my personal perspective at the time, you know, a lot of electronic music had this perception of like raving, super hard hitting bass music, dubstep, trap music, all the stuff that was going on at the time. And Light kind of came out and it said to the broader public that you can go to an electronic show and have this very emotional, positive, happy, euphoric emotion associated with it. And I feel like that capacity for the song to go from being so profound in a live setting to being able to be played on SiriusXM and having it be like streamable, that kind of bridged into this whole new Spotify era that we have today. But at that point in time, I think it was one of the very few tracks from like the SoundCloud future bass world that ended up breaking out into what we now consider like streaming and, you know, editorial placements and kind of all these good things that we have today.
It's so cool to hear that from your perspective, because I never really thought about it like that, but it's cool. If that's how you see it, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I remember I was on tour with Porter and Madion back then, and I put out Light, and I think one of the management members came to me and was like, "Whoa, your song is in like the Spotify top 50 or something."
Yeah.
And I didn't really understand what that meant. Like it was like Drake, San Holo, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, cool." But back then I didn't understand the magnitude of it. Can I say magnitude?
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't understand how big of a moment that was. So if I knew now, whoa, how do I say this in English? If I knew back then what I know now,
Yep. Well said.
I would have completely leaned into that moment. But for me, it was just a single that we put out, and it did really well.
Yeah.
And it naturally just kept on going. I didn't even, you know, post about it too much. Now I'm posting about it a lot more because I see that, you know, it's still working. And
I think that's a sign of the times, though. You know, I feel like we've shifted from much more of like a project-oriented brand perception of doing things like, you know, percentage boost, how are you feeling today, et cetera, to like, I'm going to maximize my TikToks on this specific song for the chance of making it go viral.
Yeah, I'm still not good at that. I'm not good at it.
You don't have to be. I mean, I think that's what you've built your entire brand around, is the fact that you don't need to have like a viral moment to build an audience. Like, your audience loves you first and foremost, and the music is a output of that. But I feel like your identity and your image has just like allowed people to connect with it in a way that feels distinctly different from needing a hit to be able to sell tickets.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. It's impossible for me to see it in that way. But I really respect your view on that. I'm not saying that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible for me to even approach it like that.
Well, it's just been consistent. And I think that's the thing that's so powerful about your journey so far is that, look, there was a lot of artists who came out of the SoundCloud wave in 2013, 2014. Maybe they had a couple years playing festivals. And with all due respect, I think that they're very much struggling to figure out what they want to do with their career and with their journey. And I feel like for you, you've had this consistent growth where you've been able to hone in on your image. You've been able to develop your live band and your live shows and whatnot. But it still feels very authentic to you. And I think it's a really good transition into where we are today with this album, because I feel like this album, you really went back into the past a bit. I mean, it's called Existential Dance Music, EDM. I know that there's a lot of connotation around what that word means.
True, yeah.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about what this album means to you.
Well, I like that you said there's a couple of angles here. Like existential dance music for me personally is about this inner journey, a journey through life, a journey to light. Writing this album, existential dance music, was like therapy to me. It sounds a little bit cliche, but I really learned a lot through writing about these different concepts and emotions. I stumbled upon the term self-inquiry, which is something it was completely started in this period of me writing the album and being anxious and having panic attacks. And self-inquiry is about asking yourself, who am I? You know, this when you hear the album and you listen to the album, you know that the question "Who am I?" it comes back a couple of times. So when you asked me, "Who are you?" earlier, I gave you the artist answer. I'm San Holo. I am. This is my story. But none of that truly really describes who I am deep down inside. You know. So then you go further. You go like, I'm Sander van Dijk, and then you're like, wait, that's just a name that my parents gave me. I am born in Holland. You know, I was born in Holland 32 years ago. That's another story. And you're like, that's not me either. And then you're like, oh well. Is it my emotions then? Sometimes I feel sad, and sometimes the sadness goes away, but I'm still here, so I'm also not sad. Same for happiness. I'm happy sometimes. Happiness goes away, but I'm still here. So what is that is always here? And then you get to talk about, you know, that beyond all of those emotions and forms and names, you are something way deeper, like an energy, an awareness. And we talk about that all the time, you know, being the awareness. And that's one side of what the album is about, the inner journey, which is something that fascinates me. And I'm a very existential person in regards to always thinking about, you know, purpose. Or when I see someone on the street selling flowers on the side of the road, you know, I'm thinking about what their life must be like and how they got to that point and what their life is like right now. I would love to just follow a stranger throughout their day and to really get a better sense of, wow, there's so many different stories here in this world. Anyway, I'm just obsessed with the story of the human going through this life of ups and downs. We rise, we fall. You know, it's all connected. And then when it comes to the genre EDM, that's the other aspect of it. It's existential dance music is also existential about the term EDM. What is EDM? You know, we're at this point where EDM is literally has gone from big room EDM, you know, put your hands up, put your fucking hands up, to dubstep, to house music, to trap music, to future bass. It's so fast. I feel like everything at this point is starting to be electronic music. Even bands are recording on computers, adding drum sounds and samples. Everything is electronic dance music at some point.
Yep.
I just felt like I wanted to create my own box, existential dance music. It really fits. All my tracks have always been about our journey through life, searching all the world for one thing, all the lows, all the highs. I just want to see the light. That's always been this theme, without me forcing that. It's always just been me doing that. or me. I'm not me. I'm maybe the universe. I don't know.
I feel like you've always done such a good job of making your vision very cohesive in the form of an album. Like if you listen from front to back on this project, it takes you on quite a journey. You know, and I feel like a lot of what we see nowadays, and not as much in electronic music, but just broadly within music right now, is you have 12 singles and you put them together and then you have an album. But when I listen to this project that you put out, it's very clear to me that this was not, 15 singles that are all like meant to stack on top of one another. It's like there's ups and there's downs and there's introversion and whatnot. And it's very similar to some of your last projects. I would love for you to talk a little bit more about just your process in making an album. And the reason I ask you this question is that one of our colleagues, Daniel, said that you gave him such profound advice when he came to you asking, like, what should I think about when I'm making an album? And I don't know, I just feel like you have such a unique way of looking at this idea of creating an album that I'd love for you to explain your process a little bit more with that.
Yeah, like doing singles is fun. And I know that we live in a very single-oriented era of music right now. Spotify prefers the singles. The labels prefer singles. But, a song is 3 minutes, or 4 minutes, sometimes even 1 minute these days, I can't express depth, or to me, not enough depth with just one song. So I use the albums as this body of emotions and depth that can communicate so much more. Why do people love meditating? It's, because they get closer to their true selves, to their light. And I feel like listening to an album can do the same thing, It's just a deeper, more profound experience than putting a song up and, let's listen to the next one. And I just love writing a story, not just in a song, but over the whole album. I like it when it takes you on a little journey. And I know maybe that's an art form that's dying out in this age, but it's just, I know that there's still people out there that really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's a very conscious decision. Like when you press play on that first song, you listen from front to back. Something I look for now when I go on Spotify is actually look less at like how many streams does the lead single have at this. I look at like what is the average play count from like first song to last song, because that to me indicates that people have actually like started here and ended here, which is very different from like I listened to track 3, 5, and 7, which happened to be single 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
And the reason why I wanted to bring that point up is we talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of having projects and the importance of world building around artist projects. And I think it's so amazing just to hear your perspective on this, because I think a lot of artists that are coming up right now, they're wondering, how can I maximize the success of this single or of this, one moment? And I tell people, just focus on building your world, focus on who you are as an artist and what is the world that you want to bring people into, because the reality is there's so much music out there today that even if you have a viral song, people are probably going to fall in love with that song and not know who you are. And I think it's really important that people remember who you are first and foremost, because that's the thing that gets them to keep coming back, to keep buying tickets, to buying merchandise, etc. It's not that they heard this song on the radio. It's actually that you have a meaningful body of work, a meaningful world that you've created that people feel like they can be a part of. And I feel like it's something that you've just done super well over the course of your career.
I couldn't have said that better myself. I think that's, you're a very smart man. Like, I appreciate that. Yeah, like you're great at, I gotta say, I love your questions as well. And I think they're very insightful and very, they don't feel scripted either. It feels like it comes from a very natural place. I think you should do this more often with other people. Just like, you're a great interviewer, man. I gotta say,
Well, I mean, shout out to my roots in all of music was being a journalist. Like when I was in college.
Really?
Yeah.
You probably mentioned that, but I didn't remember that.
It was always weird though, because I was going to school in Colorado. I was basically writing blog posts about different shows that were happening, different songs that were coming out. I was doing like street team work to be able to go to these music festivals, and I would ask to do artist interviews. But I remember I'd get so nervous about the fact that I was talking to this artist that I admired so much that I would almost use it as a time to just like prove that I knew culturally what was happening.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like, what are you producing? Or I was like, oh, like, what do you think of this artist who's like, on the similar wavelength as this person? And now, I mean, like, I want to give a lot of credit to you, because you've honestly been one of those artists that's just been so respectful to me from such a long time, you know, and really just kind of like allowed me to feel so natural in our conversation that when we're having this podcast, I don't feel like I need to be like asking you a scripted set of questions or like needing to prove anything. Like it's just me and you hanging out.
And I gotta say, like, of course I meet a lot of people. You were at my first show in Denver at the One Up at Halloween.
That's right. So I didn't even know what Halloween was.
I didn't even know. Like, I mean, like, I knew what Halloween was, but I didn't know it was like this here in America. Yeah. It's like, whoa. People take it very seriously here. Like,
they're dripped out in the craziest costumes.
Yeah, like I was just like wearing my black shirt and my black hat. I was like, I felt off in that setting. It was like crazy. But you know, I meet a lot of people, Cooper, and I feel like you've done it takes. I'm not judgmental when I meet people at all. I'm really open to what they have to say and what they have to, you know, communicate with me. And you've everything always just felt very natural and come like from a good place. I also never felt like you expected anything of me. And it just a very natural, also low maintenance friendship. I think, you know, we didn't expect. I feel like most of my closest friends have always been low maintenance friendships where it just felt natural, and it's just like you don't take and take and take. It's just like you give.
Yeah.
You know, and at some point you want to give back, and you know this. I don't know. I don't know why we're getting into this, but I just felt like I just really wanted to say that I think you're asking the right questions, and you got your head in the right place.
Thank you. I mean, you've given me so much just from your music and your shows. Like I can't begin to explain how many amazing memories I've had going to your concerts.
So you think my music shaped you a little bit?
100%.
That's so sick. That's 100%.
Cool. I'll tell a quick anecdote. So one of the best concerts of my entire life, easily top 3 ever, was I was going to my very first ever crypto conference. This was in Singapore in 2017. And I was with my friend Lucas. We're like, let's just go backpack around Southeast Asia after this conference. Like, we got a ticket out here to go and figure out some crypto shit. And I'm like, San Holo is playing in Vietnam. That feels pretty random. So I bought a ticket. And
the small bar, right?
Yeah, we ended up linking up, me and Lucas, in Vietnam. I run into San at the airport.
Yeah.
I think at this point, maybe we were friends on Facebook. I'd sent you a message or two or something, but this was still like, I was like, this is San Holo. Like, this is the guy. You know what I mean?
Really?
And you were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I came to see you. And you're like, what do you mean you came to see me? Like, we're in Hanoi, Vietnam, crazy. Like all this crazy stuff. And I just remember it was my first day there. I was so culture shocked about the city. Like, that place is crazy. Like, Hanoi is like 1,000,000 miles an hour, tiny streets, like so high energy.
Was it your first time in Asia?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a culture shock, you know. Like.
And you came to the show, and you came and grabbed me, and we ended up hanging out behind at the table, and I just like had such a profound experience. And the reason I want to tell this story is because recently in your collector chat, someone joined that had bought one of your songs, and they said, the reason I bought this is because I saw San Holo play a show in Vietnam.
I saw this. Didn't you send this to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you texted me this.
And he sends me a picture, and he's at the same concert that I'm talking about from like 8 years ago. And he was like, oh, this show is so incredible and whatnot. And I was like, bro, I was at that concert.
Yeah.
And we're talking out of like, there's like 15 people in this collector chat. You know what I mean? Like, this is like not like there's thousands and thousands of people. And I don't know, I just found that so profound because you've played such an important role in my journey of just feeling confident about my role in the music industry. I never knew what that role was. You know, I would go to these shows and I would be a journalist and I would write about music, and I just loved it so much. I loved going to these shows, and I felt like I learned so much from just being a fan of it. But I never really knew how I slotted into everything. And I think it was people like you that just gave me the confidence to be like, you don't need to fit into a certain box. You don't need to be a manager or just a journalist or just like a curator. You're like, you can just figure it out. And I feel like now I've found myself in a very fortunate position to be able to have an interview with someone that's seeing such an incredible moment like yourself, and just having done that on the back of basically just been a fan of the music, which is what it all comes down to, and is essentially why you started making music in the first place. Yeah,
and I feel like you are at the core just really a fan of the music. I can see that when you're going to a show and I see you sing along. Not even my show, like we were at Elenium's listening party, and I could see just like you're singing all the songs, and like, and I know it's real, man. You feel it. I've done interviews with people, radios, and they pull out their phone and they, you know, these days they have an AI program
Right.
They put in San Holo and they start asking these questions that I know they don't even know who I am.
Right.
They're just asking this program to ask to write some good questions, and they got some really weird questions, like really dated questions, and I'm just like, I can't do that. If it's not someone of a genuine interest in each other's work or life or being, then I don't even feel like we have to be talking, you know.
But you always do such a good job of just like piercing that veil, because I feel like there is such like a veil that ends up coming up of like, I am a fan and you are the artist. And I love these moments that I have with you where we go to a show and someone recognizes you, and instead of you just doing like the typical like take a selfie, run away type thing, like you always stop and you talk to that person. You're like, hello, what's your name? Where did you see me? Like you take so much time and intention to talk to the people that recognize you. And I just want to like call it out, because I feel like you uniquely are so present in these interactions.
It's
unreal.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I don't know, should I say thank you to that, or like it's like when people say, oh, you're humble. It's not an effort. It takes no effort to be humble. It takes no effort to be kind to someone that comes up to you and expresses how much they care about your music. And I always just say, look, and this sounds maybe really weird, but when someone is touched by my music, the fact that they are touched touches me just as much. It touches me just as much. So when they come up to me and say, hey, I really, this song helped me through a difficult part of my life, I feel just as much energy from that. I can't explain it in words, but I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's a very mutual thing. Like, oh, my music helped you. My music is very personal. So that means so much that you connected to something that I made from such a personal place. You know, it's not even, I don't even see the artist fan thing. It's just an exchange of love in that sense, you know?
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're an extremely empathetic person. Like, I feel like you just feel these emotions so much, and it's very interesting. I want to take this conversation somewhere that we had a chat about before. You're at this point in your career where you're playing the biggest venues you ever played. You have a show coming up at the Kia Forum. You have the show at Red Rocks coming up, which are phenomenal. And first of all, congratulations, because that's something that I can't even begin to explain how impressive that is, and just like special. But you mentioned to me that you don't always know if you want to be like growing forever. You know, like you mentioned to me kind of this idea that as an artist, we're very much pressured to have to play the next bigger venue, to sell more tickets, to get more streams, etc. I'd love for you to give some perspective as an artist that's seeing this commercial success right now. How do you think about the next 5-10 years of your life as an artist?
That's a very existential question, you know? Like, I realized, I think it was last year and also a little bit this year, that the size of the venue you play doesn't add to your happiness or anything. Like whether I play for 1,000 people or for 3,000 people or for 7,000 people, it doesn't. It's not like, oh, I'm more content now with 7,000 people than no. I realized that last year, and we are so wired to just focus on this constant growth, going bigger. But then I realized the feeling of success is not tied to that at all. True success is being content with nothing too, you know? And I feel like when I started this journey as a career artist, there was times early on in my touring life when I was playing in front, like for 100 people, where I felt more successful and I felt more, maybe even more peaceful and more content.
Right.
Than I do now when I'm playing in front of 5,000 people. And that's also what sparked this whole existential dance music album. Like, what is that success I am looking for or chasing after?
Right.
Is that, then you start realizing it's not external success, it's internal success. And I'm not here to say that I figured it out, because I'm still on a journey, but it's becoming more clear Yeah.
I just think it's a very powerful realization, because I think it's validating to hear someone that's had commercial success as you saying that you don't need to worry about always being bigger and having more. Like, there's a world in which you can really shape and build an audience that has a loyal fan base around you, people who are always willing to come out and support you. You know, yesterday for the listening party in Santa Monica, you had a sit down carpet session where you had 70 people sitting around a circle with you. And I just think it's very important to recognize that you don't need to always do bigger things to achieve more inner success. You can have that by virtue of just connecting the dots from a smaller amount of people who really care about what you have to say.
Yeah, I think what I struggle with sometimes when I play in front of thousands of people is that I lose that personal connection. That's why I do that, like the small thing, 70 people in a room playing my new album, because I can look people in the eye and have a conversation with them and make them feel seen and tell them I appreciate them. It's hard sometimes when you're in front of 5,000 people, you know, like, oh, I want to give you all a hug and tell you that I appreciate you. And I think that's the downfall of being, I guess, empathetic. It's hard for me I'm learning to create that space more. If I can't always open myself up to everything and everyone. But at the same time, I have to, because music, that's how I make music.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the toughest thing, I think. And realize going bigger and bigger and bigger, I don't know if that's going to bring me more peace, you know? I just want to, sorry, this is my anxious mind speaking. The laptop went black, and I just want to make sure if it's still recording.
Go ahead. Give it a touch.
Can I touch it? It is still on. Sorry, I just it's still recording. Sorry. I just wanted to be sure.
You're good.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a question that might not be easy to answer, but I've always wondered it, and I think that you would have a very interesting perspective. At the top of this episode, you mentioned like percentages about how you were feeling. You're saying like, one day I'm 50%, one day I'm 75%. As an artist, how do you distinguish the different feelings of shows? Like when you think about some of your favorite shows, or you leave a show after and you're like, that show was amazing, this one maybe not so much. Help me understand that as an artist. Like, what are the key things that stand out to you to be able to distinguish, like, this show was amazing, this one maybe not so much? How do you tell? And I'll give you some insights as to why I asked that question after, but...
It's a very good question. And I gotta say, I've never truly thought about it like that. I think, if anything, it's about the energy of the crowd. Sometimes I have shows where everything goes wrong, like the lights are out of sync, or the visuals go off, and my guitar goes out of tune, but the energy of the crowd that I'm feeding off of, and vice versa, is just special, and it's there. And I think that's what makes a show a good show. And you can't always control that. You can't control. Basically, you can't control anything. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned this year. Like, we have this illusion of being in control. But are you in control of your heart beating right now? Are you in control of your blood flowing through your body right now? No, it's just happening. And some shows have great energy, and it's just there, and it's just perfect, and it's just and some shows, it's not, that doesn't mean it's a bad show,
Right.
it's there's something to say about the beauty of the moment, and we can't always have the best show, the perfect show. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, and both is beautiful.
Right.
And that's the bigger picture. If you zoom out, both is beautiful. Having a great show in that story is awesome, but it's just as beautiful as having an okay show, because it just is. It's I don't know. I'm not sure if I really explained that right, but
no, it makes a lot of sense. And the reason that I asked that is because recently I've been thinking a lot about like awareness, collective consciousness at these events. And when you go into a show, I think about my presence in the audience in the same way that I would like to think an artist thinks about performing, where like as an artist, you're projecting this energy into the crowd, you're playing this music. I think about the way that a fan receives that music and they capture it and they share that with the people around them, it's like there's pockets in these audiences, you know? And something I've been really like proud of recently is like, I've been to a ton of shows and I love going to concerts and it's one of my favorite things to do, but I never understood why. And now what I've been able to realize is that music is a language, you know, it's something that you can kind of use as a dialect. And I think as a fan, being able to capture the message of what the artist is trying to say and reverberate that to the people around you, you're almost like a conductor of the energy to allow for that artist to have.
I like the word reverberate. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you think of it as an artist, as a performer, you open yourself up in that moment. It's pretty fragile. You're pretty fragile on stage. You're like, you're opening yourself up and hoping that, you know, people feel that and also open up. And if everyone opens up, you know, it's just love. It's just love flowing, you know. And I think that's why you love going to shows, because you feel that, and you feel that oneness with everyone around you. Just like it's one organism or something. You know?
It's that connectedness, and that's kind of the uninterrupted moments that I find so gratifying about it, because even your shows, you can go to it and you're able to just go on such a profound journey that I remember like Electric Formus, you were performing and, you know, all my friends were hanging out backstage. You were so generous with your time and energy. I was like, I'm going in the crowd, because I just love just being there and seeing the lasers with the water and whatnot. And I feel like it was just so special to be able to have such an uninterrupted moment where it wasn't about the fact that this was like a job, an industry event. You're just there to be present in that moment. And I think it's something that's just really important to reinforce, because maybe it's just my own experience, but what I've noticed is that the deeper people get in the music industry, they lose touch of what it was that got them into it in the first place. And I think it's so special to remember why you got here and why you chose to make this a career. And if you don't carry that energy with you, you're going to lose the passion along the way. And I think that passion and that intention is the most important thing to making this a livelihood and something that you enjoy.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
I was on a soapbox.
No, 100%. I love that you go into the crowd. That's great.
Yeah.
I had this really, really weird thought the other day. It's not a weird thought. It's a very realistic thought. And I realized I could never experience my show from the crowd. And I don't want to experience my show because it's such a cool show or something. No, but I got a little bit sad because I could never truly see the user experience almost. Right. I don't know. I can only, you know, I think at some point we all feel the same thing there. I think maybe that's what I'm trying to get to, you know. I just want to feel like the way the crowd is feeling. But it's kind of crazy that I'll never be able to really see the show, because it's not just the visuals. It's being in the crowd and hearing the people around you and feeling their energy and smelling them and in everything, all the senses. Yeah, I'll never be able to do that. So you know, just kind of it's a very existential thought. Yeah.
I'll say in my personal experience, your crowds are very conscious. I think that's the word that I would use, is that your fans are very in tune with the positive energy that you bring to the world. You know, there's a very pure intention of like spreading love. And I know that this is something that feels like generalized for electronic music, but it's not quite the case. Like there's a lot of shows where people go to just like let loose and mosh pit and rage. And it's a very beautiful thing. I love those shows as well. But when I go to a San Holo show, it's like, I'm going with the intention of singing along to this. I'm going with knowing there's going to be these moments where it's slowed down. You can take a deep breath. You can breathe. And I feel like that really comes through in this album in a very intentional way.
Amazing. That's exactly what I was trying to do, because I realized existential dance music, EDM, like the electronic dance music, is really focused on drops. You know, that's where like, oh, the drop. But to me, existential dance music, it's just as much about the stuff that happens in between all the drops, and not just the build-ups, just like the chords and the soundscapes in between the dialogues, the monologues, the words. To me, they need to hit as hard as the drop. It's just as important to me. And sometimes I say like some classical music pieces, they hit harder than the hardest EDM drop to me, you know, like it's just a piano melody just like hits your heart. And to me, that's a drop too. You know, emotional impact is a drop to me. You know, that's the I don't know how to.
Can we very
word.
quickly talk about this Sonder page that you started recently with you playing around with guitar and exploring some different forms of music?
Oh yeah, I just, you know, I guess if you're honing in into your artist project, you kind of you focus on a specific thing, you know. And this is something I struggle with actually these days, because I feel like there's so much music in my head. I want to do like guitar EPs and guitar ambient albums, and I want to do a classical album. But right now it's just not the time, because right now it's the time of existential dance music. And I'm trying to kind of figure out a way to still find ways to express myself in other sounds, you know? And because you can say, oh yeah, you just gotta do whatever you want, but it's not that we're not talking about house or future bass, we're talking about house or jazz music, you know, which is like such a different thing. And I'm trying to kind of figure out how I can still put out stuff in different worlds. It's all music in the end, but I just know people need some sort of actually maybe not people, the algorithm and the way everything is set up right now. Because if I start dropping a jazz album right now, it would be just, it wouldn't be ideal, I think, you know. And I'm not at the stage in my career where I'm just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I'll, you know.
Having that outlet is important, you know? And I feel like it's very symbolic of where you are in your life right now, you know, and kind of the things that you're experiencing. So I'm here for it. I mean, I followed that page and it's been an amazing journey. And yeah, I guess in closing thoughts, I just want to say that this album is incredible. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to tell about it in closing thoughts here, but it's going to be coming out the day after this podcast drops. And how are you feeling about that?
Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Oh, there's something, releasing music is it has a sad element to it, I gotta say, because it's, you carry this work with you and it's mine, you know, it's mine. And, you know, when this album drops, it's not mine anymore. It's
right.
The world. People are going to have opinions about it, memories and stories, which is so beautiful. But some intimacy that I have with it right now, and no one's heard it, will be somehow gone. And I'm not saying that it's not fun to release. I want to release this, but it's an interesting feeling. I hope people feel that same intimacy for themselves when they hear the album.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't want to say too much about the sounds and the meaning and the stories that every single, you know, thing means. I think they can go to like this page that we're making, right? They can. I feel like I don't want to. Right now, I don't want to say too much about it. I just want you to listen to it and feel it deep inside of you, you know? Yeah.
I'll quickly tease that because we're deep enough into this podcast that these are real people who are this far into it.
Yeah.
We built an experience for this album where you can collect the music and then leave a comment that is your emotional reaction to these songs. And San provided prompts for all of the songs saying, you know, I mean, I don't know if you want to like share what any of these questions are, but it's kind of just like a very interpersonal relationship with it. And the design intention was San can have his own relationship with the music, but I remember me and you were walking around Echo Park and we're like, what do we want to do with this? And the intention with the app was basically just to say, well, what do other people think? Like, how do I know what other people think about this music and what is their reaction to it? And so we wanted to create this mood board essentially where people can collect the songs and then just leave a comment about what this meant to them. And you can zoom out and now you have this collage of 15 songs with 15 unique prompts and document your journey and your experience with it.
It's beautiful. I still love hearing about people's experiences with the music. I think that's such a beautiful thing because every person has their own. A song can tell so many different stories. The same song can tell millions of stories. Just it's shaped by the imagination of the listener, and I think that's such a powerful concept. You know, you can listen to a song and have a completely different emotional connection to it than I do. And that's so beautiful. And this page kind of, amplifies that whole idea of, okay, what's your connection to this song? I want to hear about you. I mean, it's fun to hear about me, but I also kind of don't want it to influence how you feel. So like when you give your, or write down your feelings about the song, just really think about what you're feeling and not about what my story is to the song. Like, I want to hear about you and how you're experiencing the music. And it could be anything. It could be sad, happy, deep, emotional. Whatever is real to you is real.
I want to end this episode on a personal note. San, you've been such an incredible friend to me, such an inspiration, and someone that I've just learned so much from. I also want to speak very quickly just on behalf of you doing things like bringing Daniel out at Electric Forest at Lollapalooza. Those moments have been so monumental in my specific music career. Just seeing someone that's so close to me being able to share these, it's so motivating. I think that's the word I would use. Like, I see those moments and you offering someone the stage like that to just have this experience of looking at the crowd and what it means to have thousands of people in front of them. It's like beyond grateful is the only thing I can use to describe it. But I just want to give a quick shout out to you for just being so trusting with our friendship and with this whole relationship, and just taking so much time out of your life to just allow all of us collectively to have such an amazing experience together.
Well, you are so welcome. It doesn't, even saying you're welcome sounds weird to me, because it feels like it's something I'm actively doing, and to me it doesn't feel like I'm actively doing it. It feels just like it's just naturally happening. It's just naturally happening. And of course I want to support, it's always been in me to support up and coming artists. It's I get excited about that. I feel like so many people out there deserve to be heard, and it's getting quite complicated these days with 130 tracks uploaded to Spotify every day or something. I don't know what it is, 120, 130. But I just really want to support the people that, it's not only if it's great music, it's also, for me, the personality. I know you would never ask me to do that. Or Daniel, for that matter. It's just happening naturally,
I'll just say that it's so special though, because you do it out of the goodness of your heart, and I think in a lot of ways the music industry can be very challenging to build a career on the back of, because having that validation and having that awareness that you are capable of doing it is so important. I think so many people lose sight of it so early on. So San, I want to say thank you so much for coming on this podcast. You're an incredible human and an even better podcast guest. And I'm excited to keep it going with a little slow-mo set in the backyard after this, huh?
Thank you so much, Cooper. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Stay vibrant.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys again next week. Peace.